right? Like we're having a moment like with Stanley Cups, right? If I see somebody come, I haven't seen this yet. But the idea for a Stanley Cup accessory, like the time to do that was like 2.5 years ago.
Welcome to Talk Tuesday, a webinar series where we explore what it takes to kickstart new projects, launch new products, and create the right conditions for team success. I'm Eric Gorman, founder of Wily, an agency that helps teams innovate faster with less risk through our sprint workshops and training. We help teams get aligned, eliminate unproductive meetings, and make rapid progress using our interactive, repeatable sprint workshops. Skill up with our training at wearewily.com. And now to our guest. I'm really delighted to introduce Jeremy Losaw, Director of Enventys Partners, Director of Engineering at Enventys Partners, and giving you a promotion there. Wanted or unwanted, I don't know. But I'm really delighted to have Jeremy with us. Jeremy is a dear friend and collaborator of ours. We've done several international projects, probably close to a dozen, I would say, together across the world. And so just a really dear friend. He knows all my dirty secrets, so don't ask him anything. Jeremy is also heads up Director of Engineering at Enventys, like I mentioned. He has had over 10 patents, done a lot of product launches, and helped dozens and dozens of startups, inventors, as well as client teams develop incredible projects using products using IoT, electronics, etc. So we'll maybe talk more a little bit about what Jeremy does here in a moment, but we want to start with an initial question to kind of get us going here. So Jeremy, we work at Wily, you know, from working with us over the years, we work really hard to try to help our client teams create the right conditions to ensure success, or at least increase the odds of success. So whether that's framing up a challenge, identifying the right team, getting the ground game together so that we can really accelerate the work. But talk to us from your vantage point, coming from the lens of product development in your world. Like, what are those ideal conditions that you're looking for or trying to help instill or create to help your client teams be successful and avoid those trip hazards that are inherent and tackle a big new challenge?
And I'm going to pause for just 1 second. Yes, I do all know that we want you all to participate in the conversation too. So please use the raise the hand function or chat function on Zoom to type in your questions. And it's great to see so many of you here for our international programming and other places. So we just really appreciate you guys joining us from really all over the world.
All right, Jeremy.
Perfect. Yeah, no, thanks for having me today, guys. Happy to share what I can share with you. So yeah, I live in physical product world, and like you said, there's good conditions and less good conditions for folks to have success in this industry, right? For me, I see so many ideas, but what I don't see a lot of is people finding good problems to solve. And so I think one of the best things that you can do for yourself as a physical product innovator is find an amazing problem to solve, right? And not get obsessed with a solution, right? So for example, there's plenty of folks that come to me and say, oh, I tripped and I fell and I had a good idea, or worse still, I was in the shower and had an idea. Like, okay, I think that's like wonderful, good, it might be great, but let's find some problems to solve, right? So, and what that takes, which unfortunately is not here a lot in our fast-paced culture, is being observant, right? It's going out into the world, seeing where the trip hazards are, so to speak, in our world. So that's number one. I mean, obviously, it takes a fair amount of capital and whatever to do that, but I think capital issues can be overcome if we're solving a great problem and then being open to solutions.
Nailed it.
That's great. So we find that a lot of inventors or startups that we run into want to focus on the question, can we do it, versus should we do it? So do you see the processes like we run at Wily that kind of focus more on that fuzzy front end of a challenge tying into the product development space? And if so, like, how do you see that tie-in?
I do. Yeah, no, I think I don't see enough of my clients and cohorts to really just doing some of that front work, being really sitting with their ideas and really thinking through them, right? And so what's really nice about being intentional about the fuzzy front end piece, really thinking through problem solutions, what's the 2-year plan, and really sketching things out, is that at that stage of things, it's very unemotional, right? Mm-hmm. We've spent basically $0 working on our idea, right? When you come to me and you start building prototypes and getting engineers involved, right? Okay, now first it's a maybe a couple $100 for somebody to buy, or and then a few $1,000s to get the green engineer, and then oh boy, here we go. And then there's bigger and more fancy prototypes, and then production runs can be $100,000 for the first production run easily, right? So when we're in this unemotional space at the front end with you guys, right, like we can have these conversations, we can be really candid with ourselves and really find where the gold is before we actually spend any more real gold exploring the options physically.
Let's go off script a little bit, because this is where the fun things happen, right? So, like,
Please.
I was thinking about this in the car right over here, my shower moment, right?
Oh, here we go.
Yes. So just to do the thing you don't want to do. You said not to do, but I mean, I was thinking of the Gladiator, right? That movie scene where Russell Crowe is like, are you not entertained, right? The red meat, and this is coming from a vegetarian, of course. The red meat moment where it's like, so like give us a red meat moment where you think back to some of those projects that just go south. Maybe some of the clients that they think they're ready. You're seeing all the red flags. Maybe you're doing your best to try to navigate around those issues, but it's just not working. And you don't have to spill. Keep the innocent,
Sure,
the guilty innocent. But nevertheless, like, talk to us a little bit about some of those moments and how you've handled those, and maybe things you've tried to do to try to navigate around this.
Yeah, sure. I mean, first and foremost, especially at Enventys Partners, like we want to see everybody succeed, right? And so like we're maximizers. Like you bring us an idea, and even if like it's not for me, or if it's an idea that we might feel is not the perfect time for, or has some issues, like we try to do our best to, formally or informally, guide them to something that might be, more appropriate, and if they're not receptive to that, just do the best we can to build wonderful prototypes and give them the best chance of success as possible, right? And because things surprise us, right? And we have to be open to that. But to your point, one of the things that really, I will say, really perks my ears up when I hear new ideas is folks that are innovating on trends, right?
Mm-hmm.
We see trends in our world constantly and with a velocity that I think we've never seen before, right? And it's not just isolated to like, oh, what are the kids listening to, or young kids, what toys are they playing with, right? It's all the things that we're doing. And so like, right, like we're having a moment like with Stanley Cups, right? Mm-hmm. If I see somebody come, I haven't seen this yet. For a Stanley Cup accessory, like the time to do that was like 2.5 years ago. We've been like, if you can be a trend predictor, so you can merge that together, right? Because if we work on our Stanley Cup, like let's have that idea. Let's right. We just invented our Stanley Cup accessory, right?
Yeah, our phone sticks to the Stanley Cup, and
it's gonna funny, even if it's a simple little like maybe it's a second handle or something, right?
Right.
Just for example, it's still gonna take 6-8 months to a year to get that on the shelf, right? And about 2025, our Stanley Cup's gonna be here, right?
Something else now. Yeah.
All right, so something different. So we can't be, we can't predict the future. Like I think if again, this comes back to like, what are real timeless problems, right? Like timeless problems can sort of change with time on the details, right? And that's where we can start innovating in a nicer way that's going to make a better product that's going to be A, more helpful to society, and then B, have a better chance of you getting a return for all the effort and dollars you put into this.
So I'm curious because you're talking about like sort of the life cycle of bringing your product to life. And for those of us that are not in your space and have not had the privilege of visiting your workshop studio and seeing everything, and that's which is very cool. How many prototypes do you typically build before you're ready to move to manufacturing?
Yeah, no, good question. So there's a couple answers to this, and there's no right or wrong answer. So typically there's two sort of major prototype iterations that we work towards, right? So there's like the alpha prototype, and that might be the prototype that gets launched at a trade show on Kickstarter, right? That's something that has like, in design sprint parlance, like the Goldilocks quality, right? It has the look and the feel, and it looks purchasable. Maybe some of the stuff behind the scenes is a little bit fake. Maybe the software isn't perfect, or maybe the LEDs aren't talking to the internet. That's fine. And then there's the beta prototype where we're like, this is what we're going to take to production. And so at that point, like it really needs to be quite refined, right? And we might even be at that point using like manufacturing processes. Like we might be opening tools and actually casting parts. So those are the two major iterations to work for, before we launch it to the factory to actually make them in mass. But within that structure, like there's the freedom and enthusiasm to build as many prototypes as it takes, right? When we're in the early stages, we might build like 40 prototypes to figure out the core DNA and what's working and what's not working, right? And like where it might take a few months to build an alpha prototype, we might be able to get through like 5 or 6, 10, 12, little concept models, we call them, in an afternoon, right? And, I've used the word already, but keep the velocity of innovation going, keep our minds active, right? Like before we start investing in CAD work, and even 3D printing is too slow in those early stages, right? They so overnight to get a print, like we turned our rated offs and trying to brace out and live somewhere else.
Yeah.
And stay down and focused and purposeful what we're doing. Yeah, so it can be, so to your point, 2 major iterations, and then whatever it takes to get the core DNA to do the explorations to figure out what we need to do to make those 2 major iterations successful.
When we are doing international collaborations, we run our design sprint process, right? Our boot camp, essentially, or some variant thereof, over a few days. We're like peanut butter jelly in that you're bringing that prototyping expertise, in this case, physical prototype, but we typically do digital. We don't really do physical, just we're mocking up something physical in a digital way. But, I have my thoughts on why that partnership works really well, and it adds a lot of value to those that are participating in our boot camps. But talk to me about, what are you seeing, from your perspective that is perhaps a bridge or a conduit gateway? I mean, you often will say like unscripted or unprompted from us, but you're like, I wish I could bring my clients to do some of the pre-work that we typically do with ours. Why do you say that? And in the context of the boot camp, why do you think that's helpful to kind of marry those 2 fields or disciplines?
Yeah, and I think we talked about a few of these already, right? Like just having like this carved out unemotional or minimally functional space to really figure out what's going to work, so we can all then work together, right? Like getting into that Bible date for like system, right? Like or that exercise, like we're not going to have all the answers. We want to be pretty confident that once we start getting into more in-depth engineering work, that we have a solid path forward. And I think the exercises that we do to get people prepared for that are really helpful, right? I mean, first of all, like, especially when it's a new team, like it galvanizes a team. Maybe if it's an old team, right? Like, you see people that work together for years, often there's like weird little rifts and things, right? And then it helps, one, it helps break down walls and build new walls, right? And I think, especially in corporate innovation, another thing is like people get really frustrated because sometimes everybody has ideas. Like every one of my engineers, everybody, all my bosses, we all have ideas, right? And one of the things that design sprints really erode is that hierarchy, right? And I'm like, okay, the boss has the final say, so that's on him, right? And so I think we get shy with our ideas sometimes, even in an innovative culture, to say, hey, like, here's what I got. What do you think? Because at the end of the day, like, okay, it's might get shot down or whatever, right? And there's this higher. So being able to like, give everyone equal footing to put their foot forward, to be heard, right? I think is really important. And that's, and then to eliminate that sort of like groupthink mentalities, right? We can whiteboard till we're blue in the face, but at the end of the day, somebody's just going to keep the whole process. And it's not very interesting. And it's not going to create anything that's super. So that's the kind of stuff I like. And I think, to my point about some of the frustrations I have with people innovating on trends or innovating for themselves, right? By giving them a way to very quickly vet some ideas and I test them really quickly before we spend a ton of money. Like we can, like I feel like I could kick some people in a direction that would, like suit them better.
Yeah, I love in the presentations that you give on our international trips, you talk about the 11 pitfalls to avoid in product development. There's a number of people in the trial who have heard that talk and heard Jeremy tell on himself too, and the sins he's committed in the product development space. But I'd love for you to touch on some of those that you find to be maybe the most risky, or the ones that you see are most common among the inventors and developers you work with.
Yeah, great question. So yeah, a couple we talked about already. So innovating on a trend, that's like one of my least favorite. Right? We talked about innovating for ourselves, right? I see that so much. People get so to use a movie reference, so gall about their ideas, like it's very my precious, right? And it's really difficult to break down that wall sometimes. That can be very frustrating. plenty of times I've seen folks who have been like, okay, and you try to give them that nudge, and it's just really hard to derail them.
Can I add to that for a second? I love that you say in your talk about this, that some things are just hobbies, and hobbies are good, right?
Fine.
It's fine to have a personal hobby or even a professional hobby, right? Like you can be working within a company and decide that this is a pathway that you think is really important and maybe no one else does. It's still okay that it's a professional. I love the way you label that. There's nothing wrong with that, but maybe it doesn't need to be brought to the masses at that point.
Yeah. Using credit cards to fund your hobby. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily make a sustainable business. So yeah, we see that a lot too. And some other things too, like you have to be really cognizant of the value that your product's going to bring, right? So that goes back to the problem, like what problem are you trying to solve, right? So, yeah, I think, if you're trying to, just be really honest with yourself of what value is this, right? Like, are we really solving problems that somebody's going to throw down a bunch of money for? And I think people are always, relative to that, people are always underestimating how much it's going to cost for the production of their item. And so it's always going to be more than you think. And so make sure, like, if you add, 20 or 50% onto what you think your retail is going to be, do you still think the value's there? Okay, then you probably something.
Yeah.
Right. So that's another one. Yeah, other things pop up too. Like there's manufacturing issues can pop up. There's some things that, can trip you up when you get down the road. Some of them are predictable and some of them are not. So that's a really tricky one. But, in terms of things that you can, that you can do preventative maintenance on, so to speak, again, the value creation, the innovating for yourself, those things we can really, whether it's just design for the process or just having, some sensibility, some common sense about it, we can take that away.
In our design sprint process, we're big believers in going to the customer, very early in a sense that people are incredibly uncomfortable with how early we're asking them to be vulnerable and this thing that's only partially baked in front of them, right? But that's intentional because you haven't fallen in love with it yet, and you're able to get some real feedback and insights that then could be applied in the next iteration. So I'm curious, in your space, when do you all begin to put things in front of users?
So it depends. So again, some people, and it depends on the personality of the inventor too.
Mm-hmm.
Like again, some inventors want to keep it very close to the chest, and that could be for a very good reason because it is going to be groundbreaking, cool stuff, and they don't want to give anybody else a head start on that. And it can also just be hubris too, right? It can just, sort of just defeat our ego. Like, I have this great idea, right? We've all met that person at the party. Like, I'm like, oh, like it sounds so on this thing. Oh, dang! Like, oh, what is it? Like, oh, he's not saying. Okay, well, what is it? What category is it? Like, is it a baby product? Is it a tool? Like we can talk about, that's what Trisha love, I think, a lot, is you can talk more freely to some folks about your ideas without destroying your patentability and your intellectual property. People often think that, like, if they release, or if I tell you about my Stanley Cup extra handle, that you're going to go and do that. But, like, we're all quite busy and lazy. And if we're not passionate about it, we're probably not going to be, doing it. So yeah, I think, that's some of the things that gets people, sort of twisted up sometimes. Sorry, what was your question?
No, you took, but that touched on something because you said, people aren't always that passionate about something and they're lazy. What are the characteristics that you feel like those soft skills that make, for a successful inventor? Yeah,
very good question. So, yeah, I think when you're doing products, people often think of like the garage inventor who's, gotten their saw going and they're working all hours and grinding on things, and they know have a lot of mechanical aptitude. That's fine. That's a superpower. I'd say you don't need that though. Like, I've met inventors who are like insurance salespeople and they've been good products developers and good product entrepreneurs. What they had was a passion for their idea, and B, the care and the drive to go figure it out, right? Like, whether it's taking prototypes to a pitch competition and like trying to win a few $1,000s to get to the next prototype, like just that drive of having like an end in mind, like, okay, this is going to be launched on Kickstarter for $40 in like a year and a half. This is what we're driving towards, and whatever we need to do to get that, whatever shortfall in funding or whatever we have a thing called technical debt. Whatever technical debt we need to figure out, whatever, technology we need to figure out before we can produce it, like get the steps in place and have a plan and be driven about it, right? Like I sometimes am like, people, I have inventors that will call me all the time and be very, very chatty and text me and things. And I'm like, what now? But I really love that because I want to see my stuff out there too. If I'm helping you do the thing, right, I want to see you, right? It's like if you help your kid, catch a ball or whatever, you want to see them in the game doing well, right? I want to see I hate it when our folks go out and they're not successful. Like I want that on, I want to feel that bank shot, success too. So
cerebrally, right, that's those pitfalls you spoke of, you do a good job of that, and that talk that you give of avoiding those. But ultimately, you also share some stories when you succumb to those things. And I think it's really important for our audience to understand that, we can wave the banner of being experts because we do this type of work over and over and over for clients. However, when it comes to problems that we face, challenges, start a new business, or whatever it is, and in your case, you can start, maybe talk about your example, but we fall victim to those too. So it's not that you suddenly have the epiphany, oh, I've been screwing up all along, like I'm just going to start doing it better now. No, it's really, really difficult to avoid these pitfalls if you're not intentional. You don't surround yourself with really smart people that can help you guide and avoid those pitfalls along the way. So it's just human nature. But maybe you want to share a little bit about maybe some of the personal stories or pitfalls that you've succumbed to.
Yeah, sure. Not happy to. Yeah, happy to.
You're like,
no, I think in a way it's like the way you just described is kind of like, like we all know that we need to floss. Right, we just need to put a plan in place to make sure that we're flossing, or be around other people that are flossing, right? Like if your partner's flossing every day, like you're probably flossing. You don't want to be so I mean, to that end, we can still fall prey to those, to getting over our skis and sort of like going too fast, right? So my example that I talk about in my talk about this is like, it was like, okay, about 9 or 10 years ago, I had this great idea for this new type of RC car, right? And I was just so interested in it, obsessed about it, thought it was going to be wonderful, and, did a bunch of development work. And mind you, this didn't cost like a ton of money, but like, there's some time and effort and, emotional resources that went into this. I ended up going to like Cleveland for like a weekend to test it out and whatever, right? And it was all very fun too, but like whatever. But then we launched it on Kickstarter. And it made like $230. Like, did it fail? Totally done. And then we brought it, we tested it and it was terrible. Like everything, but just I went too far too fast and got burned, right? So, I think I committed 5 of the sins, right? I innovated on passion. I found a market that was like very small, like for these old tiny RC cars. Eventually that led to a lost passion. Like I had my daughter very soon after that, right? And then my priorities changed, and I'm like, am I really going to fight for this? Like, it may have been a very good platform to okay, that could have been my starting point. Like, okay, I'll make some tweaks, look at the data, figure it out, and like maybe I could have made something interesting and great with it, or at least in that industry. But once you lose the passion, it's like over. Right. So, just
you shared some stories too of like people that have gone through the entire product development journey have been successful, launch a successful product into the marketplace, which is a Herculean feat, right?
Sure.
And yet the passion can still, and priorities can still fade, or maybe conditions that led to the drive are no longer present when it comes to the continued execution, right? Because those are very different animals. Launching something versus sustaining and switching over to operations mode versus just building it. I don't know, we find it's a challenge to keep our clients motivated. Again, in different contexts, we're not necessarily working with inventors. We sometimes do work with startups, but not necessarily solo inventors. But nevertheless, like keeping that motivation and drive, because you accomplish that big goal, but there's still, 1,000 hurdles in front of you still to go. So talk to us maybe about some examples you've seen of that happening, and maybe ways to kind of keep that passion alive.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. And I think some of that is innate too. Like some of us like to chase new things, and some of us like to be more ops people, right? And so, obviously, a way to combat that would be, just like traction, right? Having the operator and the dreamer, right? And right, that's if you can get to the point where you're, far enough down the road and you can bring somebody in close to, and have that, 1-2 punch, maybe you don't need to keep that. You can have passion for your brand at that point, but maybe not necessarily for your products. But
knowing your limits, knowing what you're good at and where you bring in others to help.
And knowing up front that, like, I know once we figure this problem out that I'm going to be bored. So I need to, like, be aware of my own limits, my own, personality, and know that it's just going to fade away. I'm like that too. I love the early stuff, right? I once it's like up and running, like, I always have interest. That's me. I love tinkering and figuring it out, and then somebody else can take it. So I understand that personally. But yeah, I think, like, I had a product that, I worked with an inventor, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 years ago now, and he built this interesting product that was to iron your collar, right? Did a wonderful job. He kickstarted it successfully, got it into Amazon. It was sold well.
Yeah, it was like a small form factor. Take it traveling.
Play hamburgers, travel iron, wonderful thing. Eventually, like, it was, he got to the point where, it was just a grind to get into Amazon, and he just sort of lost some passion for it. He had gotten financially and I think spiritually what he needed out of the journey, right? Because it's very cool to see your stuff out there and to buy it, right? That's cool. Like, you send your friends a link, like, look at this cool thing I did, right? It's wonderful. Yeah, and I think, for him, I don't know that he, just didn't build a team around that, right? And for him too, I don't know that there was a plan for, like, a second product. Like, in product world, one-hit wonders are great. Like, I've seen TV products, right? You can make empires out of this stuff for sure. But the more sustainable stuff, go slow to go fast. If you can, as best as you can, have a plan to have, like, add on things, or, like, be working on some new innovations as, the previous ones are being brought into the marketplace and being produced. Having that pipeline, I think, for him would have been more interesting to have something to work on and innovate on, and a new passion. So anyway, it was great. It was good success. I by all means, it was a successful program. It just, had a period of time, and this is what it is.
Thank you so much, Jeremy, for sharing all your wisdom. And
I'm Jake Knapp, and I'm the creator of the Design Sprint process. I'm the author of this book, Sprints, and I am here at the Wily offices in Charlotte, North Carolina. This right here, if you were thinking about maybe doing a design sprint with Wily, this is where you would be, at this table, probably, unless you do it at your office, which is totally an option, but right here in this space with a whiteboard, with a bunch of paper and pens. Basically, they're going to help you think through the problem, get it started, and get a solution tested really rapidly. That's the whole idea with a design sprint. I'd highly recommend, if you're thinking about it, that you do give Wily a chance to your project. I've worked with these folks a couple times, and they always exceed my expectations. I always do things a little bit better than I could have imagined ahead of time. They're also really nice. So don't tell them I told you that. I try to, keep it cool, but they're super nice people. Anyway, best of luck to you, and try Sprint.